Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sports Junkies. I'm your host, Brian Mansell, joined by my co-host, Connor Keating, and our guest today, Anthony Cerulli. How's everybody doing today?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Awesome. So we've had some crazy stuff happen this entire time we've been gone. Now that we're finally back, it's time to catch up. So let's go start off in the basketball world and go right to the LA Clippers Denver Nuggets Game 7. So for those who don't know, in that Game 7, the Nuggets decided, we aren't playing games. You're obviously not going to show up because you think this is an easy win. So we're just going to send you out of the playoffs by winning by almost 20 points. And so with that win, the Nuggets will be playing the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. Men, what are your thoughts?
Well, I saw that coming. I know I said earlier a few weeks ago in the second episode of this, I said it was going to be Clippers and Heat in the finals, but when I saw that the Nuggets came back in one Game 6, I was like, there's no shot their momentum's going down. They got to win Game 7. And then I saw Jamal Murray and Jokic go off, and I was like, yep, it's good. No shot.
There is so much to unpack about this one Game 7, and simply not enough time for me to rip a new one into this Clippers team. There are 4 words for me to give you why this Clippers team lost. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. It all comes down to the fourth quarter. They were 1 for 11 shooting, that entire Clippers team starting the fourth. Paul and Kawhi are the 2 best players on that team, the top players. Kawhi cannot come out here for 43 minutes and only put up 27%, and Paul George only 25% in 38 minutes. Look, I don't know about you guys, but this does a lot to hurt the legacy of Kawhi Leonard. There were already some conversations about him, moving up on the greatest players list. That Raptors series shine is starting to wear off a lot. He's not a leader when they need him most, and he needs to think about, for next season, how to really drive this Clippers team to get past into the Western Conference Finals. And you can't really blame the role players that much for this L. Montrezl Harrell, Pat Bev, they played pretty well. But I think it all comes down also to Doc Rivers, because during the game, they were talking a lot about how Doc Rivers told his team, don't get in foul trouble. And for a team that's as aggressive as this Clippers team, you can't really do that, because now, guys like Pat Bev were holding back on defense, and that really hurt the Clippers come down the stretch.
It really did, and that was really detailed, I have to say. That was a great answer. I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. It really does also go, the blame does pass around. It's not just Paul George. Despite, if nobody saw that video last night when he took that shot in the fourth quarter and it bounced off the side of the backboard.
That was pretty bad.
It was bad enough to the point where Damian Lillard even commented. And he was asked, what do you think of the shot? And he's like, looks good to me. Like just poking fun. But it also goes beyond him. I believe it was poor coaching by Doc Rivers. Mm-hmm. And I think you also got to give a lot of credit to the Nuggets here.
Of course.
The Nuggets did incredible last night. They did exactly what they did in the first round, which is they came in, they were down 3-1, they knew they were going to be in trouble, and that they needed to win. And because Mike Malone, and this is going to be very controversial, because Mike Malone is the best coach in the Western Conference.
What?
He was able to get this team on the right track, come back, and win the series. Not once, but twice. Mm-hmm. Which is why, if the Lakers end up taking a 3-game lead at any point on them, I'm never going to say that the Nuggets are out of it. Because Malone is that good of a coach.
Yeah.
And that's going to play into next series. Is Malone going to be able to keep this squad on point when they play the Lakers? And plus, who's going to cover LeBron and AD together? Who is going to do it?
The Lakers are still the favorites going into this because, they have 2 of, in my eyes, the top 5 players in the league right now, in LeBron James and AD, and a great coach in Frank Vogel, which I don't think gets enough credit. But to say that Nikola Jokic isn't the best center in the NBA right now would be, in Stephen A. Smith's words, absolutely blasphemous. Okay, we've never seen a center like him in all of the history of the NBA. Last night he put up 16 points, 22 rebounds, 13 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. Unbelievable numbers. And a lot of that goes also to Jamal Murray. At times he was the best player on the court when Jokic was off the court and Kawhi was on the court. And that says a lot about someone as, aggressive as Jamal Murray. And he needs to keep that up against the Lakers. But I am a little nervous about someone like Michael Porter Jr. If they really want to go up against LeBron and AD and the rest of the Lakers squad, guys like Michael Porter Jr., Jeremy Grant, Gary Harris, they really got to step it up. And that's not to say they didn't last night, but when you go up against the top team in the West, you really got to go all out on them.
You're on point on that. I 100% agree. Connor, when the Nuggets play the Lakers, what is each team going to have to do to get into the finals and beat the other team?
Score more points than the other team.
Well, duh.
I mean, that's the given. But what else can they do?
I say the Nuggets need to obviously keep Jamal Murray and Jokic need to continue their production that they've been doing this series and in the first round. But then they need to contain LeBron and AD, make sure they can't go off. They need to make sure they don't go off and have their big streaks of points and stuff and have a big night each night. If they can contain those guys, and I think, because there's to be honest with you, I think the Lakers they have a decent team, but really I think LeBron and AD are the two main point scorers on that team. Caruso, yeah, and then but I mean it's really if you can contain LeBron and AD, you have a good chance to beat them. I think
that's a very good point, and I do agree with that. I think that's really all it comes down to. I don't think anybody else on that team for the Lakers can really put up 30 points a game outside of LeBron. If one of them doesn't have a 30-point game, the team is in trouble, and it's always been the weak spot for them. You contain one player, that one player will not be able to contribute, and their points falling, no one else can be able to pick it up. You think if LeBron puts up 10, 15 points, do you really think that Caruso is going to make up for those points?
No
Do you
way.
really think that somebody like KCP is going to pick up for those points? How about JaVale McGee? Maybe Dwight Howard? I mean, come on. Who is really going to say that they can pick up for them? The value they bring to that Lakers squad is beyond anything I've seen. For me personally, the Nuggets actually have to figure out how are they going to contain either player. They have to decide, is it going to be Anthony Davis or LeBron? If they choose Davis, they risk LeBron pulling off one of those Cavs moments and dropping 50. They risk that happening. But if they don't cover AD and they cover LeBron instead, Anthony Davis has the ability to not only be dangerous inside the paint, but from the perimeter. He's been known to be a decent shooter. So if you leave him open on opportunities and you focus on LeBron, it could easily be 50 points for him too, and that's another win. Either way, you have to find a way to make sure that your defense is balanced enough so that both players don't go out for big 30-point games. That's the big question, and that's the big thing they have to accomplish. Can they do it? I believe so. Is it possible that the Lakers are going to make the finals either way? Yes, very possible. But I would never rule out the Nuggets, and it's strictly because Mike Malone is the coach. And that's why he can never be doubted. So, obviously, we've now talked about the NBA. We finally got the Clippers banter out of the way, the Nuggets positive talk finally. And now we get to move on to the next big topic, hockey. We already got one team. That would be the Dallas Stars, who knocked out Vegas in 5 games. Am I still butthurt about it? Yes, I am. I mean, besides that, what we do need to focus on now is the Eastern Conference, because now you look over on the East, and it's the Islanders and the Lightning. The Lightning had a 3-1 lead going into last night, and they were looking to close it out. But they had a double overtime thriller that led to Jordan Eberle scoring the winning goal to keep the Islanders alive. And for those at the Barstool group, let me tell you, the Borellis were very happy. So that's to say the least. Now, we're going into a Game 6 now, because now it's a 3-2 lead. We know how bad 3-1 leads are and what they've meant historically for teams, dating back to 2016 with the Thunder and then with the Cavs. We know how it goes. Now, the question is, you have to think here, Do you think the Lightning are going to pull it out in the next game and win the series, or do you think the Islanders will have a stroke of luck and make the finals?
I think the Lightning are going to win and win Game 6 and make the finals. They've just, like, all series, they've pretty much owned the series. Like, they've played the best, and they haven't really had any mistakes. I mean, yeah, they had lost. I can't remember what game they lost, but and they just won. I feel like every aspect of the game they've pretty much led. I feel like it's their series to lose.
As a resident Islanders fan, I would usually say that this series would be over, as it is becoming easy to say for any New York team, whoever makes the playoffs. But with this Islanders squad, I have to say there is still some light at the end of the tunnel for them. And it all comes down to, guys like Eberle, who obviously is a huge player, in this victory. He's proven himself in these big moments. He doesn't seem to get nervous when the game is on the line. And, he's going to be a huge player in, Game 6, maybe possibly a Game 7. But something like a Game 5, something like this Game 5 is very hard to figure out, who really has the edge. Because, sure, it is 3-2 right now, but what we got in Game 5 was a very even matchup. It almost felt like cat and mouse, like each player was waiting for the other to strike. But, it all came down to the Islanders coming up big. The power plays, Islanders 1-3 compared to the 0-3 to Tampa Bay. They were almost even on block shots, but, Islanders picked up 2 more. Little things like that. Even the coaches play, the coaches challenge, rather, for the one that kept the Islanders alive after Tampa Bay's goal. Something like that. It's all these little things that are keeping this series very even. So it's surely going to be a tough challenge for New York to come back from this. But, if we have the same type of play that we saw from, the goalie and from Eberle and just from, the very even matchup that we saw on Game 5, we could be seeing an upset in New York.
This could be very, very possible. I think the Lightning do have a realistic shot. I think it's outside of Eberle, too. I think you also have to take it to the pound of Barzal. Barzal's been playing very, very well for them. And let's also not forget Varlamov. Varlamov has had moments where he hasn't been great, hasn't really been himself. But overall, he has been a phenomenal goalie this season for the Islanders. I think he alone has been one of the main reasons why the Islanders have made it so far. And
I totally agree.
I believe that his play over these next 2 games could really affect how the Islanders proceed from here. If he continues to play at a high level like he did last game, with all the block shots he had despite the Lightning's efforts, if he continues playing the way he is, the Islanders have a really good shot of making it to the final. And that could mean knocking out the Lightning, who were not really favorites coming into the bubble, but really a team that once they started playing a couple games, everyone knew, hey, they look like they're going to make it. And every year we say that, and then they end up choking it, and they end up failing. And we know that this is a Lightning team. This is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have a habit of failing when they have high expectations. They have a good habit.
That's very true.
And this also goes into not having Steven Stamkos for the entire Stanley Cup as well. He's not played a single game yet. And they don't expect him to play until the Stanley Cup final, if they make it. I do think at the end of the day, the speed and the overall success of Vasilevsky also for the Lightning's end is really what's going to pay dividends. And I think whether it gets to a Game 7 or not, the Lightning pull it out and they're going to play the Stars. Who's going to win the final? That's for another day. But for right now, I strongly believe the Lightning have it. But I'm not ruling out the Islanders making it as well.
I could see it going to Game 7, but I think at the end, the Lightning will pull out the series win.
Yep. Hopefully Lightning strikes this time. All right. So now we get into – I know. I'll take it. But the final topic for us is, of course, football, because football's back. I mean, we're finally getting football when no one thought it was going to happen. And now here it is. We have the NFL Week 1. And so many great storylines, so many bad storylines that we could cover here, which could include injuries, completely horrible performances from teams, some huge surprising victories. For example, Jaguars upset the Indianapolis Colts. That was huge, especially people expecting to have the number 1 overall pick this year. And then in the first game, they just pounced on the Colts so quickly and easily. Unbelievable. You could also go into account the teams that really, really played horribly. And there's no other way to put it. That would be like for the Browns playing the Ravens. Granted, they played the Ravens, but they did not play as a team they were expected to be this year once again. Mm-hmm. So now I ask you guys, what are your biggest takeaways from week 1?
So I would say my first big takeaway was Chase Young's performance in his game against the Eagles. How the Washington football team was down, was it 17-0, right?
Yes, they were down 17-0.
And then they scored 27 unanswered to win the game. But Chase Young he had 2 solo tackles, he had a sack and a half, and he had a forced fumble in his first NFL game. So, I mean, usually rookies on the D-line usually take a little bit to get, situated. But, I think that's a pretty strong showing on his part for his first game.
I have a few takeaways from just week 1. Firstly, this is going to be a pretty weird season. Just without a preseason or fans, it's going to be a little hard for these players to get adjusted with their new teams. But I was thinking about it, and I mean, with no fans in the crowd, this opens up a lot of possibilities for different players to hear calls different, listen to the quarterback, making the plays. So this might be a plus for them at the end of the day. Another plus, as I just mentioned, would be, another takeaway from this would be the quarterbacks. We saw a lot of great performances from guys like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes that we've come to expect. But, we also saw guys like Tom Brady on his new team in Tampa Bay. Another pick 6. This is now his 3rd game in a row if you take into account the playoffs that he's had a pick 6, along with another interception. But Brian, I know that you are a Tampa fan, so I wouldn't be too worried about it just yet. No preseason gives you a little harder of a time to mesh well, so I would give it a little more time. But on the other side, you have Cam Newton on the Patriots. 2 rushing touchdowns. He was very aggressive, and he's healthy for the first time in a while. So you've come to expect, some great play out of Cam when he's healthy. But, 15 runs a game isn't going to be consistent for him. So, Belichick is very smart, though. He's going to know how to exploit the strengths of all of his players, as we've seen with his work with Tom Brady that led him to all these championships. So I'm looking forward to Cam Newton. I feel like he's one of those quarterbacks that you need to look out for. And, of course, there's other teams that play great. You have Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. They're meshing well against the 49ers. I mentioned Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. But then you have some teams with a lot of downside. As I always say, New York is still New York. The Giants' O-line is going to give Saquon a very long season if they don't get their act together. And for the Jets, until Adam Gase is fired, as the acronym goes, JETS, just end the season.
That's a classic. I love it. I've always loved that since I was a kid. Now, before the people start commenting on this video and saying that I am a bandwagon Buccaneers fan, I will have you know that I have been a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers since I was living in Florida when I was a little kid. So I have.
I'll back that up. I've known for 2 years.
And you've known for 2 years.
I've definitely known. As long as I've known you, you've been a Bucs fan. So I'll back that one up.
And yes. And my Brady slander wasn't bad. You can't call me a bandwagon. It wasn't.
Oh, I'm not calling you a bandwagon. I just love it. It was just funny because I never hear you talk about the Bucs and then Brady comes. You're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're just ashamed. I get it.
Usually you would expect me being a Bucs fan to talk about the Bucs as my takeaway, right?
No, but you're not going to.
I'm not going to because the reason why is there's nothing. I don't think there's anything to talk about. I think it was week 1. I think they're still getting things figured out chemistry-wise. Because think about it. Any team who's got new players at key skill positions, they're going to struggle at first, especially if they don't have the time to get accustomed, which would be in the preseason to sort stuff out. Right. So now they're going to need a couple weeks to get back in the groove and then finally get everything to work properly. And over the next 4 games, I see that happening. So we're not going to talk about Tampa. I'm going to go to a couple of the teams, starting off with the team that the Washington football team played, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. And this goes out to our former anchor on here, Josh. This is for him. The best way to word it for the Philadelphia Eagles are fly, Eagles, fly away, because the injuries are back. The injuries are really what hurt the Eagles the most this week. And yes, I'm not going to completely blame this on Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz may have thrown those 2 picks. He may have fumbled the ball. But at the end of the day, he was sacked 8 times by the Washington football team, who wasn't even in the top 10 in pressure provided last season. And I don't care if you have Chase Young or not. There is no excuse that your team gives up 8 sacks on your quarterback, including giving Chase Young a sack and a half. No excuse. No matter what. The injuries are what killed them. And at the end of the day, that comeback is going to be on Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz, and the strength and conditioning staff. That's what it comes down to. Now, another thing, the Browns, because I've got to talk about the Browns here. Because of the OBJ stuff. OBJ had a horrible performance this past week. I understand that he may have gotten maybe over 50 yards receiving. I get that. But my problem is Baker's not completing passes. He's overthrowing again. And the pressure and protection he's getting this time for the Browns is better than what he had last season, and he's still struggling and doesn't trust his team. That provides a huge issue right there. Because if he doesn't trust his offensive line and his people there, he shouldn't be there. He should be somewhere else where he feels like he can thrive and trust the system. That would be like a place like, and this is going to sound weird, with the Jaguars. Jaguars are a good area right there. They may have gotten rid of a lot of people, but they could really use somebody like Mayfield. Maybe it's a backup because Minshew's playing out of his mind. I mean, think about it. 95% completion percentage, 19 for 20. Come on. I mean,
all I'm going to say is Baker Mayfield is the most overrated number 1 pick ever.
I don't think overrated.
I don't know about ever,
have to
but
put him above Jamarcus Russell.
Okay,
Are you
in
really
the
going to
past
put him above
2 years.
Jamarcus Russell?
No, I guess not.
Okay,
you say
so he's
that.
not the number 1 ever. Not even the last 20 years. Now, moving on.
Okay, maybe not the most, but he's pretty overrated. But that's okay.
I'll give you that.
There we go.
Odell Beckham Jr., watching him, he was sluggish. He looked like he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to play. He didn't have that pep in his step he usually has every season. I don't know if something's going on in his life, if things got exposed that weren't supposed to be exposed. But honestly, Odell Beckham looks like he doesn't want to be there anymore and he wants to get out. The rumors went around that he wants to get a trade done because Mike Francesa said it, which if he really said it, honestly, I don't know if we're really going to believe it. It's a 50-50 there. So it turns out that Odell's agent says, oh, it's not true. He never requested a trade. So, okay, maybe he doesn't want to trade. But I still believe at the end of the year, he will be gone one way or another. Whether it's they decide to release him, whether or not they trade him, or he says, I want out. It's going to be 3 different ways. Either way, it ends with Odell Beckham leaving, unless something changes this season right after what just happened last game. Completely atrocious game. I don't care if it's the Ravens or not. And finally, I want to talk about the Cardinals defense. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. Cardinals played the 49ers, walked in, and they beat them. And I've never thought in a million years that I would see that with Kyler Murray, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, and DeAndre Hopkins doing all the work there. I never thought I'd see it coming. And my big thing with them is, with the Cardinals, I'm not going to really look at the offensive side as much as I'm going to look at the defensive. Because the 49ers defense we know is good. They were very good. They were very good last year too. It's what really got them to the Super Bowl. But for some reason, the Cardinals defense was better this game. People are going to say it's because of Kittle's injury. But the thing is, Kittle came back in the second half. He may not have been 100% playing in the second half, but that does not mean that that's an excuse all of a sudden that he got hurt. He came back. It doesn't matter. The point of the fact is, Jimmy G had a bad game, I think. Despite what his stats say, I don't think he played to the level he could have. He could have played better. I think on the ground, losing Matt Breida really hurt them. Not having Matt Breida held them back because now their run game suffers, which was a high point for them last year. Mostert and McKinnon are not a good duo together. You have one or the other. I think Mostert is the better option there to keep as a starting running back, and that's it. Because right now that duo doesn't work. It really hurt them last game. And then we just look at how well they played defensively. Maybe you could point out Debo not playing. Maybe you could point that out. But to me, that doesn't matter. Because the fact of the matter is, your position at wide receiver is so deep. You have so many weapons. There is no excuse. And this falls on Jimmy. It falls on the head coach. And it falls on the run game. That's the three faults there, and that's why the Cardinals won. Their defense was good enough to actually stop them on the ground and in the air.
Fair.
I think the Cardinals are an underdog this year that are going to surprise everyone.
I was saying that too during the offseason. I was saying it was very possible. And not because of that acquisition of DeAndre Hopkins, but because they're finally getting on track. Mm-hmm. And that was the important thing. They needed to get on track.
I think once they got Kyler Murray, those things are going to start turning around because Carson Palmer was getting old, and then Josh Rosen wasn't that good. So it's like.
But now Josh Rosen's in Tampa, and he's learning behind Brady. But whatever, I'm not going to go there.
But no. I'm not saying he's not going to play, but I'm just saying when he was on the Cardinals, I don't think he did that well. And then now they have Kyler Murray, which is I think a lot better. I think he's more agile, can do more things. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fair. That's fair. Any other takeaways, guys? One more, maybe?
Maybe just a funny thing about the Dallas Cowboys-Rams game, how Aaron Donald just completely threw Ezekiel Elliott to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, that was hysterical. He got through one offensive line, and then when he faced off against Ezekiel Elliott, just completely laid him out. I think what's funny is, and I'm going to make sure that I put this in this episode somehow. I'm going to show this to you all. If you guys saw the play from Arizona to San Francisco, when one of the offensive linemen who they just acquired, Trent Williams, the longtime veteran that used to be on Washington before they were the football team, he went on and got into the secondary for a block and completely pancaked Jordan Hicks. I will make sure to put this in here so you all get to see it. But if you watch the video, he decides, hey, I'm going to lay you out. I'm sorry, man. And then everyone in the comments on Twitter is like, oh, my God, the man has a family. Stop. Don't do that to him. Oh, man. Trust me, there were so many great moments this week. But you know what? I think the overall message here is football's back, and we're just happy it's back.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's
we have live sports again. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. That's going to do it for us here at Sports Junkies. I'm Brian Mansell with my co-host, Connor Keating, and our guest, who will be recurring this year, Anthony Cerulli. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon. Be safe.